Hey everyone, welcome back to my channel and an update on my 100 books in a year challenge. In the month of May, I read 9 books, which is the best I've done so far in any month. I also surpassed the 25 book mark, so I'm over a quarter of the way there. Because I read so many books this month, I decided I'm going to do 2 videos. One about all of the books that I read in May and what I think about them, and then I'm going to do another video all about what books I'm planning on reading in the month of June. That's what we're going to do, so let's talk about some books. Okay, so the first book that I read in May was called The Dangerous Days of Daniel X by James Patterson and co-authored by Michael Ledwidge, I believe is how you say his name. And this book is about this boy whose name is Daniel, and when he is very young, an alien comes to his home and kills his parents. So while you're reading about this alien killing his parents, you also learn that he has these special powers. He can use his imagination to create things or to change himself into something different. So he has these weird powers, and after the alien kills his parents, he escapes and he vows to kill this alien. He finds this list created by his dad that is the most wanted aliens on Earth. So these are all the aliens that are causing havoc on Earth, and so he starts to make his way through the list, killing off the aliens. And this is a series, but this was the first in the series. I did not particularly enjoy this book. It was really easy to read. I will say that the chapters were only a couple of pages each, so it was very fast-paced. And I love James Patterson, so I thought I might really enjoy this. It was just kind of strange to me. I don't know. I think some people will enjoy this book, and I think definitely if you're younger, it is a YA book, but I would say it's definitely on the younger end of YA, almost middle grade to me, just in the way it's written and its story. So yeah, it was okay. It wasn't my favorite. I'm not going to continue to read the series. I ended up giving that 3 stars on Goodreads because it was just okay for me. Next book that I read in the month of May was a reread for myself, and that was Catching Fire by Suzanne Collins. And if you don't know, this is the second in the Hunger Games series, and I don't want to give any spoilers, so I won't talk about it too much, but this is my favorite book in the series. I love the arena in this one. I also have a humongous crush on Finnick Odair. I love him so much, and the actor who played him in the movies is amazing. So yeah, I love this book. I will say, as a reread, I gave it 4 stars instead of 5 stars, just because the beginning is a little bit slow when you're kind of dealing with the aftermath of the first book. So as a reread, it is a little bit slower because you kind of already know what happens, and at least for me, I want to get to the action part. But it is also an amazing book. I really like this series, except the last book, but I could talk about that a lot. But yeah, I really like this. 4 stars. Totally recommend this series. The next book that I read is called The Last One by Alexandra Oliva, and I thoroughly enjoyed this book. This is a thriller, and basically what happens is this girl named, her nickname is Zoo, because she works at an animal sanctuary, goes on this television show where there are a bunch of contestants. It's kind of like Survivor meets Alone, if you've watched either of those shows. It's kind of like both of those mashed up. So they go out into the woods, basically, and they're given challenges to complete, and they're also like just kind of surviving. And very early on, you find out that basically people are getting sick, and a lot of chaos ensues. So I loved it. It flip-flops timelines and perspectives. So one perspective is, it's kind of like you're watching the show, but you're reading it. And then it flip-flops to Zoo's perspective. I don't remember if you ever learn her actual name. That's her nickname on the show, because each contestant gets like a nickname based on what they're good at or what their jobs are and stuff. So hers is Zoo, but I don't think you ever actually learn her real name in this book. I just realized that. I don't think you ever learn her name. Anyways, so her nickname is Zoo, and she goes on the show, and it's really good. Like, it had me enthralled from the beginning. I loved it, and I gave it 4 out of 5 stars, only because I would have given it a 5 out of 5, but I gave it 4 because you pretty much know what's going on from the beginning, and you're just kind of like waiting for her to realize what's going on. And then, it becomes pretty emotional in some parts. I would say it's pretty gruesome in some parts, so be warned about that. But yeah, I really thoroughly enjoyed this book. The next book I read was actually an audiobook, so I listened to it, and that was called The Book Jumper by, I'm so gonna mess up this name. She's German, so I'm so very, very sorry. But it's The Book Jumper by Mechthild Glaser, I believe. And this book was originally written in German, and so the audiobook was translated into English. Again, I really loved this book. This book is about a girl whose name escapes me. I'm so bad with names, you guys. Let me look it up really quick. Her name is Amy. So it follows this girl named Amy, and she is like in her teen years, I would say. And her mom, it's a single mom, they are deciding to get away from the city for a while because Amy has had some bullying at school, and her mom has just broken up with a boyfriend. So they decide to get away from the city, and they're going to go to this island that Amy's mother's family lives on, so Amy's grandma. And while they're on this island, Amy finds out that she is a book jumper, which means that she can go into a storybook and like live out the story, basically. So she can go into what's called the book world, and their jobs as book jumpers, so there's like a couple of them on the island, their jobs are to make sure that the stories keep going on the way that they were meant to go, and that nothing like disturbs them. So she finds this out, which is like crazy, right? And I think every book lover's dream. She also finds out, well, she doesn't find out, it starts happening. So this thief starts stealing things from the book world. They start stealing what are called like, what are they called? Core ideas, I think is what they're called, from different stories, and that obviously derails those stories, and they're like, why is this person stealing these things? And so it's all about her figuring that out, and there are like 2 families on the island that can both book jump, and so this other boy that's there, and she falls in love with him, and it was really good. I really enjoyed the narrator on the audiobook, which is super important, because if the narrator's no good, then no matter how good the book is, it's just not enjoyable. But yeah, this was a really good book. I ended up giving it 4 out of 5 stars. Again, it was like teetering on a 5-star for me, but the love story between Amy and the boy was just kind of like instant love, you know what I mean? Like, they just they met and they kind of liked each other, and then all of a sudden they were in love. So I didn't really like that very much, but I did really like the story overall, and would highly recommend the book. Next up, I read a true story. This is Grandma Gatewood's Walk by Ben Montgomery, and this is about this woman who was the first ever woman to hike the Appalachian Trail in one go solo. And she's freaking amazing. She also did this for the very first time in her 60s. She was like 67, I think, the first time that she walked the Appalachian Trail. If you haven't heard of the Appalachian Trail, it is over 2,000 miles. It is the longest continuous walking trail in the world. So yeah, that's freaking impressive. I, for the most part, enjoyed this book. Anything about her was like so interesting, and she had a really kind of a horrible marriage and a horrible married life. She had a good childhood, but a horrible married life. And so her story is really fascinating. She seems like an amazing woman, a super interesting woman. The thing I did not like about this book is that Ben Montgomery would sometimes go off on tangents, like, I don't know, like for one chapter, it was all about how people weren't walking as much and automobiles were taking over and everyone was driving and they were like building highways. And I was like, why do I care about this? I don't understand. He just would go off on these weird tangents that didn't really have anything to do with her and really broke up the flow of the book for me. So for that reason, I gave this 3 stars, but I would still highly recommend this book. And yeah, she's really, really interesting, super inspiring. So, I mean, if she can do it, we can do anything. Like, there is no excuse. So anyways, I thoroughly enjoyed this. She was a super interesting woman to learn about. And yeah, it was great for anyone who loves hiking, or even if you just want an inspiring story, I would highly recommend it. The next book that I read in May was The Clue of the Broken Locket. You can see my poor book. It's very old and it's falling apart, but I love Nancy Drew. Nancy Drew is something I grew up on. My dad used to read it to us when we were going to bed, and my mom read Nancy Drew all of her life, so a lot of these books I got from her. So easy to read, obviously. Yeah, I loved it. I did end up giving this one 3 stars because this was not my favorite Nancy Drew book that I've ever read, but obviously, I mean, I love Nancy Drew. In this book, Nancy's dad, who is a lawyer, helps facilitate the adoption of some twins to these like actors who are totally self-involved and complete bimbos, both of them, both the man and the woman. And so Nancy is like, you cannot give these kids to these idiots. And so she's determined to find the birth parents. And yeah, I enjoyed it. It was cute. What can I say? It's Nancy Drew. The next book that I read, I was so excited to read. So excited that I made myself read two books before I would go and pick this up because it was on hold at the library. And so I was like, you have to finish these books before you can go pick this up and read it. But that is The 100 by Cass Morgan. If you haven't seen the TV show, it's one of my favorite TV shows. I binge watched 5 seasons of it when I was house sitting for 2 weeks. So yeah, I loved it. I'm obsessed with it. I did not, on the other hand, super enjoy this book. I mean, it was okay, but it was just okay. This book and the TV show is about, it's like kind of dystopian, sci-fi, post-apocalyptic world where these people are living in a space station in space because there was a nuclear war on Earth, which decimated everything, and made Earth unlivable because of radiation. So it's been, in the book, it's been 300 years since anyone lived on Earth. They think they're the only people left, you know, in the entire galaxy because everyone else was killed by nuclear bombs. And so they're all living on this space station, and if you are 18 and over and you get caught committing a crime, you are killed. If you are under 18, then you go to prison until you're 18, where you have like a retrial and people can give you like a second chance to live, or you get sentenced to die, which is pretty horrible, honestly. But they decide to send 100 of these teenagers down to Earth on what they call a drop ship to see if the Earth is livable. And so they send these kids down to Earth, and it's all about these kids and surviving on Earth, but split timelines and split perspectives. There we go. And this follows 4 of the kids, and also there's actually 1 adult, but so it follows, let's see if I can remember. Oh, it's on the back. It follows Bellamy, Glass, Wells, and Clark. So those are the 4 characters that you're kind of following, and you're learning about them and about how they got into prison. And like Bellamy, for instance, he's an adult, but his sister was in jail, and he worms his way onto the dropship, which you will find out in the book how he does that. But and so it's like finding out how she ended up in prison and how he feels about, you know, his sister and this whole situation. Glass makes it out of the dropship and is living back on the space station, so you get to see some stuff that's happening in the space station at the same time as these kids are on the planet. Wells and Clark were dating at some point, but now Clark hates Wells, and so you learn about that, and you learn about how Wells and Clark get into prison. And so it's definitely character driven. It's all about the characters, all about their relationships. It's good. It's not as good as the TV show, but I'm hoping that because literally this book compromises about 3 episodes, the first 3 episodes of the TV show, that the series will pick up in the next book or 2. So I'm excited to read those and see what I think. I ended up giving this 3 stars because it was just okay for me. I did enjoy getting to know the characters on an even deeper level, and yeah, and I'll definitely continue reading the series because I'm obsessed with the 100 right now. So anyways, yeah. The next book that I read is called Lock and Key, The Initiation by Ridley Pearson, right? Yes, Ridley Pearson, sorry. It's like covering up half of his name, but yes, down here. But anyways, this book is kind of an origin story / retelling of Sherlock Holmes, and it specifically is kind of focused on James Moriarty. Yeah. So Sherlock Holmes and James Moriarty both end up at the same boarding school and are placed as roommates at this boarding school. And this story is actually told through the perspective of James Moriarty's younger sister, Mariah Moriarty. So they're at this boarding school, they're roommates. James kind of hates Sherlock. I mean, Sherlock's not exactly the most popular person on the planet, even when he's an adult, so they're like, 13, 14, going into high school type of age. And so he's even more annoying, really. And yeah. And then James starts getting clues, these like riddles sent to him. And well, he gets one sent to him, and then it leads him to more clues and riddles and stuff in red envelopes. And Sherlock tries to help him, but James doesn't want his help. But James can't figure them out on his own. So I don't know. I had lots of issues with this book. First of all, James Moriarty and his sister, they grew up in Boston, which is ridiculous. Like Sherlock Holmes and James Moriarty, they are British, okay? He did not grow up in Boston, but anyways. Then this boarding school is like in Connecticut, so why is Sherlock Holmes, who is again British, he is British in this as well, why is he going to a boarding school in the United States? It makes no sense. I don't like it. I don't like that this was told in the perspective of James Moriarty's younger sister. I feel like we could cut her out of the story almost completely and tell it through James's perspective, or even through a dual perspective of James and Sherlock and how they have to like figure out their crazy relationship. I also think James Moriarty is supposed to be like as smart as Sherlock Holmes, right? As clever, as smart as Sherlock Holmes, and that's why he is Sherlock Holmes' arch nemesis in the books, well, in the short stories by Sir Arthur Conan Doyle. But James is like, he cannot figure anything out in this. He doesn't understand any of the clues. He's super lazy. I just really did not like this. I really did not like this. I'm sorry. I wanted to like it, but I have a really hard time. I love Sherlock Holmes, the original short stories. I love Basil Rathbone as Sherlock Holmes. I also love Benedict Cumberbatch as Sherlock Holmes. I feel like both of those, if you want good retellings and reimaginings of the Sherlock Holmes short stories, watch either Basil Rathbone or Benedict Cumberbatch and skip all the rest because they're really not good. This one included. I feel like an origin story for James Moriarty would be really interesting, and them going to a boarding school together would be really interesting. Like, maybe they were great friends and then, they're solving mysteries together, and then something happens that causes them to hate each other, and then it causes James Moriarty to, go evil. I don't know. That would be more interesting than this. I just really did not like this. I ended up giving it 2 stars because it had some redeeming qualities, but not many. Not many at all. I'm sorry. And the last book I read in the month of May, we finally made it, is Yes Please by Amy Poehler. Now, to be completely honest, I'm not 100% finished with this, but it is the last day of the month when I'm filming this, and so I will finish it today. This book, I love Amy Poehler. Parts of this book are great. Like I said, I'm not finished with it. I'm a little over halfway through. But parts of it are just, it's kind of like a mishmash of a bunch of different things, which is fine. But it's like gets a little confusing for me at some points. Like, who's she talking about? Is she married at this point? Is she divorced? Does she have her kids? Does she not? I'm a little confused on the timeline because she just kind of like flip-flops through a bunch of different stories from her life. But it is still good. I still like it. I will probably end up giving this 3 stars out of 5 because it's like, okay, you know, like I like it, but it's not great. I didn't dislike it. So, yeah, probably 3 out of 5 stars.